Hey everyone, Minutia Minute here, coming at you with some Wednesday comic book reviews. I've got 4 books to review for you today. I'm going to keep things kind of simple because I don't have a whole lot of time today, and I want to share my thoughts on the books for today, March 19th. Kicking things off is a book that's ending on kind of a disappointing note, which is really, really sad, and that is Animal Man number 29. I saw this book going one of two ways. Either at the very beginning of the book, Animal Man gets whisked away to across the galaxy to become the guardian of the red for the universe or whatever, and he has to talk the alien guy into letting him come back to Earth and be with his family. And then we have this sort of wonderful denouement where he gets to come home, finally at peace, and we end the series on a very, sentimental family note. The other way I saw this book going is it opens on a sentimental family note, and we see the family coming back together, we see everything going very well, and then at the very end he gets whisked off to another planet and yada yada yada. He's stuck there, and we end on a sour cliffhanger note. I was hoping for the first of those two because just the fact that Jeff Lemire is leaving this book is having that be the crux to end the entire series seems excessive unless you're really going to give the book some serious finality. So I was kind of hoping that, this whole universe thing was going to play out and get resolved in this issue, and we get to get him back to his family. And I thought that, even though we don't get to explore that whole universe, it's something that could be explored down the road, and it works as a good sort of mechanism to sort of reaffirm the sort of family values that Jeff Lemire set out to build up in the Animal Man universe with his series. We don't get the second option. We don't get the first option. We get a whole other thing that I didn't think of, which is that we actually don't deal with the interdimensional being at all, which is extremely disappointing. Jeff Lemire talked about how this was going to be a very sentimental send-off to the character, and it is at first. We kick off the book with some great some great Travel Foreman artwork, bringing us back to the early days of Animal Man, before the Rot World event, when things were just getting going. And then Animal Man sits down and is going to tell Maxine a story. And Maxine says, "Dad, you're so stressed out. Let me tell you a story." And then that's where we divert into the Jeff Lemire artwork, which is completely fine. Everything he did is sort of in these big, full-page panels, which I had no problem with. I thought that it was very good in terms of an artistic way to kind of wrap up the series. But unfortunately, the story that she tells him is really just a recap of everything that's happened in the series thus far. And so you're basically kind of ending the series on kind of like a greatest hits episode, where we're not getting anything new. We're just kind of getting a retelling of what we've seen so far in just little snippets. And that was what really disappointed me about this. It didn't really add anything. I feel like we could have just ended with issue number 28 and would have been just fine. We do have an allusion to the fact that he might get pulled off into this, across the universe to become the Guardian of the Red. But it's just kind of in one panel, and it's one of those, Buddy Baker's wife makes him promise that he's, going to tell her everything, and he's not going to tell her that. So, we're really just ending on kind of an ominous note more than anything. After Maxine tells her story, Buddy Baker kind of goes outside and smiles at the fact that he's on Earth, and that's all there is. I'm guessing that with Justice League United, we're going to see that storyline play out there. And I'm not getting Justice League United. Like, I wanted to get Animal Man. That's why I got it. And they're ending it, and they're going to spin this whole thing into this other Justice League title. Throw Adam Strange in there to give it a big cosmic storyline. And that's all. And it's really disappointing. I wanted a real sense of conclusion with this book, and I don't get it. And for me, that's just not enough to cancel the book. Like, just because Jeff Lemire's not going to be on it, I don't feel like it's justified. But as I said, I'm not getting Justice League, even though Jeff Lemire's writing it, even though it's going to have Animal Man. I feel like it's probably just going to be DC kind of trying to come up with their own kind of Guardians of the Galaxy, you know, with Adam Strange, and have some cosmic stories, make Animal Man this big cosmic character, and try and, you know, wish that you had a movie called Guardians of the Galaxy coming out in the summer. Like, that's all I can really think of, and it's just kind of soured my opinion on the whole thing. So, unfortunately, ending on a poor note. Doesn't mean this was a poor series. If you didn't pick this up in singles, definitely pick up the trades. Lots and lots of really great stuff here, especially after we got out of Rot World, the pit that was Rot World. A lot of really great character stuff. Really, really strong storytelling from Jeff Lemire on this series. And most of the reason I'm bitter is because I'm just sad to see this title go. So, if you didn't pick it up, don't pick up this issue, but definitely pick it up in the trades. All right, next up, I did pick up Daredevil #1. So I guess the big question is, you know, with Marvel coming out with all these #1s all the time, how often is it justified? Like, you know, should this have been Daredevil #37? I am going to go out on a limb and say this actually does justify a new #1. And it's not just the change in environment. As you know, or most likely know, you know, Daredevil is going to San Francisco, and it's a whole new world for him. You know, he can't, his powers are somewhat handicapped here because he doesn't know the city like the back of his hand. And, you know, the cities on the West Coast are not built the way cities on the East Coast were built. And so it's this whole nother world that he has to kind of become accustomed to. And, you know, the way he fights crime is actually completely different here. Because, you know, he has sort of this person, Christy, what's her name? Kristen? Whoever was in the last series that, you know, they have his sort of love interest for the Mark Waid series. Is, you know, in his ear, he has an earpiece, and she's talking to him, telling him which way to go and how to get away from the bad guys and all these different things because he can't find his way around. And it's kind of like they've almost taken away his superpowers to some degree. Like, they're there just enough so that he can get around, but they're not so heightened that he has a superhuman advantage over the enemy, which is a very interesting way to take this. The other thing that's very tonally different that also makes this justified as a #1 is that this actually feels more like a detective story. And it's because since Daredevil almost doesn't have superpowers in a way in this, and I use that phrase loosely, what his super senses are really good for is the powers of deduction. And the book opens with him sort of looking at evidence and Sherlock Holmesing it. It's like, well, the echo clearly shows in this audio clip that this was in a place that had low ceilings but very wide room, and it was on the water because of this reason, and I've determined that it's at this bowling alley right next to this nuclear power plant. Like, you know, just like the most crazy leaps in deduction because he has access to all of that super sensitive information through his senses. But again, it's deductive. It's not, you know, he's not using it as a superpower as much as he's using it as a Sherlock Holmesian power of deduction. So definitely a different feel for this, and I'm glad that it's different. But at the same time, I wonder how long that's going to keep up. If this is something that Mark Waid can really sustain as its entire own new series. Or is this just going to end up being like 12 issues and then, you know, he goes back to New York and we get a new creative team and, you know, this is just some kind of digression before, you know, the whole series reboots at issue 600 for the big 600 anniversary issue kind of, you know, I'm sure that's probably coming up anyway. So anyway, I think you get what I mean. Like, no telling really where this book is going to be headed at this point. I am excited to be getting this, even though it is twice a month. I think I'm going to go for it because I've been getting Daredevil monthly for a long, long time. And I can't justify not sticking with it just a little bit longer. And with Hawkeye being as bad as it was, to be honest, I don't know. Even though I said otherwise in my last video, I don't know if I'm going to be picking up Hawkeye next month. And what better way to replace it than with just a little bit more Daredevil. Daredevil. So anyway, issue number 1, definitely worth a pickup. If you're on the fence about this one, but you're willing to give it a try, I think it might be worth your time. Very good read. All right. Penultimate book I read this week was Wonder Woman issue number 29, and this is the last issue. Pardon my language, the shit really hit the fan. You know, the prophecy was fulfilled. A child of Zeus will kill Apollo, yada, yada, yada. And now we're into the home stretch. You know, Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chang's run in this book is going to be coming to an end. And they've been telling this big, grandiose story, and you can really feel all the pieces really moving into place. We get the return of Hera. In his final act, Apollo gives Hera her powers back, which sort of brings her back into the forefront of the story. And Wonder Woman faces off with the Firstborn. They all terribly get their butts kicked in this, and then they're left basically needing to raise an army to defeat the Firstborn. And that's where this book is headed. You know, super gods battling each other on, you know, Lord of the Rings epic scales. It's hard for me to talk in detail about this book because the ending is where this book is at, and it's a really, really interesting, and I want to talk about it, but I also don't want to spoil it. But what I will say is Brian Azzarello has picked and chosen what he wants from the Wonder Woman universe. And he cast a lot of stuff out early on. You know, he killed off everyone on Paradise Island. You know, Wonder Woman is now sort of this single person who's now the daughter of Zeus. And it's very different from the traditional idea of Wonder Woman. What's interesting about the end of this book is that some of the older ideas of Wonder Woman start coming back, and they start getting reintegrated. So it's like Brian Azzarello completely cleared the playing field, and he eliminated the stuff he didn't necessarily want to use, or at least not right away. And then he built this whole new Wonder Woman universe. And then he slowly, bit by bit, just like he does with Hera at the beginning of this, by giving her powers back after, 20 issues or whatever, he starts taking these other discarded ideas, the classic Wonder Woman ideas, and starts putting them back in. And it's going to be really interesting to see how those pieces come back into this new Brian Azzarello world, and how it all kind of culminates, and where he's really going to lead this series. And I'm really curious to see how much of that old mythos comes back with a Brian Azzarello twist, and how they can take that after Brian Azzarello leaves and what they can do with it. I think that Brian Azzarello, based on this issue and some of the stuff that happens in this, is really going to leave things in a very good place. And I actually have some high hopes for what could happen with Wonder Woman after Azzarello leaves. Although I know it's something that worries a lot of people, I think that whoever does take over this book will be very well set up. So it's hard to talk about without telling you what happens. So just bear with me. If you've read the book, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, when you do read it and you go back and check this out again, you'll know what I'm talking about. So anyway, Wonder Woman 29, always worth a pickup. If you haven't been buying this series at this point, you should just wait, read the whole thing in trade from start to finish. It's a ride, and it's definitely worth being on. Okay, the last book I'm going to review today is a book that kind of caught me off guard. It's a series I've been enjoying, but I haven't enjoyed it as much as past series, partly because of the artwork. And that, I'll just tell you what it is. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Utrom Empire #3. The artist on this is Andy Kuhn, who, those of you who have read some or have seen some of my past Turtles videos, you know that when he was on the regular series, I was not having a good time. His artwork is just very, very plain, very, very, scratchy and unfinished. It looks like the whole thing was kind of done with a Sharpie marker. I will say that his artwork is actually, I don't know if it's better. Maybe I'm just more used to it. But I think it is actually better than the artwork he did in the main series. But as we've come to the culmination of this story, I've sort of gotten so beyond the artwork and so into the story that this book was actually a real treat to read. I am going to spoil some of this, but I'll warn you when I start giving away the big stuff. So, excuse me. This series has been really interesting because the last miniseries we had was called The Secret History of the Foot Clan. And in it we find out that the Shredder and the Foot Clan have these long-lost ties to the Utrom Empire, which was kind of like mind-blowing. Like there's a final panel where you saw Crane come by in a human suit that looked exactly like the suit he wore in the cartoons, and it was a mind-blowing moment, and it was really, really interesting and left you on a big cliffhanger. In this, we kind of get the flip side of the coin. We get to see kind of what was going on with the Utrom Empire at the time, why they decided to try and make an alliance with the humans, and sort of their thought processes after the fact about how it didn't work. And I hope I'm getting this right. I mean, it's been a long time since I read the miniseries, and I hope I'm connecting these dots correctly here. But basically, we have, Krang, who's tried to make these alliances in the past, and they're basically on the run now because the Utrom Empire has all but fallen, and he's just got his few people that he's using this ooze as something they developed to keep the Utroms alive. And all while this is going on, this whole backstory is cut against modern story, very much the same way that The Secret History of the Foot Clan had a modern Shredder story in it. And that modern story is Baxter Stockman basically trying to commit genocide against the Utroms, and Fugitoid getting in the way, and basically slyly playing everyone against each other. And this is where I'm going to get into spoilers. I have to spoil the end of this book. It's the only way I can talk about it, and it's just too exciting for me not to talk about. So if you haven't read this issue, just cut this video off. I don't have any other books I'm going to be talking about, so have a great day. Those of you who are still here, let me tell you about the end of this book. So Fugitoid doesn't want to see the Utroms, they don't deserve to be extinct, is sort of his opinion. But at the same time, there's the whole Technodrome problem and the fact that, this is this world destroyer, basically, the way they're building it up. And, that can't be allowed to exist either. And so he basically sets it up so that Krang has to, Krang allies himself with Fugitoid because he saves the Utroms. He covers for Baxter Stockman to keep him around so that Krang doesn't kill Baxter Stockman because he thinks, so he doesn't know that he even tried to commit this genocide in the first place. And then he sends out two messages. The first message he sends out is, and this is Fugitoid sends these messages out. The first one he sends out is to the Turtles, and he basically says, I can help you destroy the Technodrome. And they've been talking about the Technodrome here and there throughout this issue. And then he sends out a second message. And this is where things get really interesting, because I've been wondering, how is this Utrom story going to tie into what's going on with Turtles right now? These sort of side stories always tie in some way, but it's really unclear how that's going to work. And right now, they're in Northampton, and they're coming back to New York, which means we're coming back to fight the Shredder. And historically, when they do this big return to New York thing, they kill the Shredder. Like, that's what typically happens. I think it was issue 27. What issue are we on? Oh, this is number 3, but I guess we're on 32. So we're like very, very similar, because I'm pretty sure it was 27, issue 27 of the original series, where the Turtles came back to New York and they cut the Shredder's head off, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure it was like beheaded. And everyone's been wondering, well, how are they going to play that out in this new series? And we get a hint of it with the second message that Fugitoid sends out. So he sends this first message to the Turtles. He says, I can help you destroy the Technodrome. And then the Turtles are like, awesome. And they're like, we have to raise an army now, because how are we going to do this? And then Fugitoid sends this second message out to none other than the Shredder himself. And we don't know the contents of the message, but the implication is the Turtles and Shredder are going to team up to take down the Technodrome. Now, do I think that's what's going to happen? No, I think that the Shredder is probably going to get control of the Technodrome, and we're going to have our little sort of cartoon moment where, Shredder has the Technodrome. Historically in the 90s cartoon, that's the way it was, right? It was Krang and the Shredder and the Technodrome. I definitely see that happening here, But before that, we're going to have this uneasy alliance between the Turtles and the Shredder, which is going to be super, super interesting, especially on the heels of everything that's happened with Leonardo. And he's just gotten away from the Shredder, and now he's going to have to put himself back in that situation voluntarily and with all of his brothers with him. Furthermore, I don't think the Shredder's going to die if that's the direction they're going to head. So, man, just what a killer ending, just because of the implications of what's to come. I think that 2014 is going to be a really, really good year for the Turtles. I mean, they have set so much stuff up. Every issue, while they have had several independent story arcs and all these side stories that are also very independent, when you read them all together, things have been building for a long time. A lot of world building going on, and things are just going to get crazy this year, I think. We're going to have some crazy Technodrome stuff. We're going to have a crazy meeting up of the Turtles and the Shredder and Krang, and things are going to get explosive. I am super excited to pick up issue 33 of the Turtles next month. Cannot wait. So anyway, those are my reviews for this week. Kind of a smaller week for books, but it was kind of nice. It let me kind of relax and read a little bit slower than I usually do so that I could get this video up still at my normal time and you guys could enjoy this video. Thank you for watching my video and watching it in kind of just sort of the old style. I don't have my little sidebar with my comics. It's not all super organized. It's kind of me with messy hair talking about books. But I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a great Wednestopia, everyone. I know I certainly did. So I will talk to you soon, and have a great day reading comics.